Greetings everyone. Today's video we'll be looking at sampling in data collection research, and for this matter we'll be looking at the research process as a whole. So regarding the research process, it actually starts from identification of the general problem or the problem statement, which is followed by the research gap and the research question. And in order to get to the research question, we need to perform a literature review. And once we have performed or conducted a proper literature review, we will be able to specify the questions or the hypothesis. So, and then we determine the design or methodology of the research project, and this is where the data collection comes in handy. And once we have collected the data, then data analysis and then interpretation of findings, which is usually shown in the results section. So we'll go there, we'll discuss the research process step by step. So the first step is in conducting research is refining the study question. And in order to get to the study question, you need to identify the research gap. And the research gap is identified by clearly stating a problem statement and its clinical relevance or clinical significance of that problem. And once you have written a problem statement followed by research question, then it's better to have a conceptual framework or a theory model that places a question within a theoretical context. So this is the first step in conducting a research, that is finding a research question and identifying the research gap. Now, the second step is defining your research outcomes. So what exactly is the outcome of your study? And this usually comes when you have already answered your research question. So it is direct. So the outcome of a study is related directly to your research question. And now this outcome or this prediction of your outcome could be true or it could be false. And based on the research outcome, the data is collected. So a little bit on steps of conducting researches. Now, once we have identified the research question, then we need to, and we have identified the outcome. Then we need to find out the designs and methods, or the tools which we need so that we can reach our outcome. So depending on the study, it could be either observational study, in which we are looking at the different associations between the variables, and we're not intervening in any way. There is no intervention involved in observation. And then we have the experimental study, in which there is an effect of changing one variable on the other, and we are looking at this experimental study. And this experimental study could be quantitative study, and besides the quantitative we have qualitative research. And now qualitative research are hypothesis generating studies in which we find out the reasons which are behind certain behaviors or decisions. And then we have validation studies, in which we are trying to collect as much evidence as we can to find out the predictive value of any instrument. For instance, program evaluations, or after assessment or after exam course evaluations. And then we have surveys. Our questionnaire-based studies are they're also known as CAP studies, knowledge, attitude, and perception, in which we are asking questions to better understand a subject characteristics. Another observational analytical type of study is systematic review. And in systematic review, we are using an established method or criteria to summarize previously published studies. So this is not an intervention study. We are not performing any experiment, but we are trying to summarize what has already been published. So briefly, we'll just look at the different types of researches that we have just discussed. And we have quantitative research. In quantitative research, we have experimental study and quasi-experimental study, in which there are numbers when we are dealing with numbers, while qualitative study is a study that deals with perceptions and views and opinions, and it doesn't deal with any numbers. And then we have the analytical study, in which an analysis is performed between two variables to answer a research question. And then we have the mixed method study. A mixed method study is a mixture of quantitative and qualitative study. And for instance, if you're looking at the performance of students in the exams and their views about the exams, then we need to have scores which represent the quantitative analysis, while the qualitative analysis will comprise of their perceptions and their views about their exams. Now, finally, educational research is used as scientific inquiry, and this is where the different research designs come into play. Lastly, we will just look at the different types of research designs from an educational perspective, as well as from a biological perspective. So these are the different types of research designs in a nutshell. We have quantitative study, in which we have a non-experimental as well as experimental studies, and then non-experimental studies can either be descriptive, comparative, well, when they're comparing two different variables, or a dependent variable and the independent variable. Then there are the correlational studies, in which we are trying to find out the association between the variables, and then we have the causal comparative. And in experimental studies, in which there is an intervention involved, we have true experimental studies and quasi-experimental studies when there is no randomization, and we also have a single subject experimental study. As far as qualitative studies are concerned, we have case studies, phenomenology, ethnography, and grounded theory qualitative studies. And then in terms of analytical study, we have the concept analysis and historical analysis. We'll be looking at these different studies in details in the next videos. Thank you for your attention.